Welcome to Discovering the Law. My name is Lucy Rivera and I am the host of this program. This episode can be viewed at www.discoveringthelaw.com. Today we are very proud to have Justice from the Supreme Judicial Court, Margot Botsford. Thank you for coming and
my pleasure.
Visiting
Absolutely.
us today, Your Honor. Your Honor, why did you want to become a lawyer?
Well, I graduated from college, and I wanted to either be a history teacher or a lawyer. So I started by going to school to be a history teacher. And I was so bad at it that 6 weeks after I began it, I stopped the program. So then I said, well, okay, now the other choice was being a lawyer. So I did some volunteer work and then applied to law school and went the next year. But it was really coming out of high school that I American history courses, and I thought I was going to either teach history or do the law.
And so being a judge is very different. What led you to become a judge?
Well, I went to law school, and when I graduated, the first job I had was clerking on the Supreme Judicial Court. And I clerked for a wonderful justice, now deceased, but named Francis Quirico from Pittsfield. And so I worked with him for the year, and I loved it. It was exciting. It was. He was wonderful. I felt like, but it was almost like being a judge. It really wasn't, but that's the way I felt. And so I decided then I want to be a judge. And so then I tried to figure out jobs that would make me able to apply, at a later point.
So how did you become a judge? What were those jobs and all your experience?
After I did the clerkship, which is 1 year, I went to work for a law firm, but I didn't really like that very much because I didn't like it so much. So I then applied to be an assistant attorney general. There had been an election, and Frank Bellotti had been elected Attorney General, and I applied to be a lawyer in that office, and I got the job, and that was great. I liked the public sector a lot. And so I did that for 4+ years, and then I started my own firm with my husband and another lawyer, but I'm really not a private practice person. So then I went to work for the district attorney in Middlesex County because I thought I needed criminal experience and civil experience in order to apply to be a judge. So I was still thinking about that. And so I did that, and then after that, for doing that for about 6 years, I applied to be a judge.
And what is that process? How do you become a judge?
Massachusetts does not elect judges. It's one of really not very many states that doesn't elect any judges at all. And so judges are all appointed by the governor. But the governor, for many years, each governor has had a judicial nominating commission, which is appointed by the governor, and their lawyers and some lay people, not lawyers, serve on it. It's like about 20 to something people. And so you fill out a paper application, and then you get interviewed by this large group of people. And then after they interview and they do check your references and do all that kind of stuff, they send, for every opening, 3 names, or it can be anything, but that's usually the case, 3 names to the governor, and then the governor chooses. So it's, but it can take a while.
It seems very difficult.
Well,
it's like a process.
It's time consuming. The application is hard to fill out, and but it's, I think it's a good process because it really makes you think about what you've done and what you want to do, and there's a lot of people who are weighing in on you know, whether you're qualified, and so.
Very interesting. So now that you are a judge and a woman judge, does being a woman affect how you decide cases and the perspective that you take in deciding cases?
I think it does, sometimes, not all the time. I think, in other words, I think there's a lot of areas of the law that don't raise issues that are particularly relevant to being a man or a woman. And so a lot of the time you just kind of decide the case based on what the law has been and what the questions are that are raised. But clearly everybody, man or woman, brings to whatever you're doing your life experience.
Yes.
And who you are. And so I think just inherently it, being a woman affects what I do as a judge, as well as my fellow judges. And you know, there are cases where the experience of being a woman does play a role. I mean, there's a very famous one, not from my court, but in the federal court in Boston, where now, well, just former Chief Judge Sandra Lynch, she was at the point not the Chief Judge, but it was a case, I think, involving employment discrimination. And the majority of the court decided it one way. I think I have this right. And she wrote either the decision or dissent, and I cannot remember which was extremely forceful and very much based on the fact that she was a woman. And it persuaded the rest of the court. It is an extremely influential opinion. And it's clear that being a woman had a whole lot to do with it. So, you know, I think there are issues that that experience plays a big role in.
Do you feel that anything has changed for women in the legal field in your experience? What, if anything, has changed? Or
there are a lot more women. I mean, there are a lot more lawyers in Massachusetts. When I became a lawyer in 1973, way back in the last century, you know, I think there were, I'm guessing at this, but I think there was something like 2,000 or 25,000 lawyers, maybe less, in this whole state. There are now 60,000 lawyers in the whole state. At that time, well, even in 1959, in terms of people taking the bar, there was something like 500 people altogether, or 400 people altogether, of which 7 were women. Now, and the bar exam is being given today and tomorrow.
Good luck to
them. Yes, good luck to them. There are about 2,000 people that take it, and I'm guessing again at this, but I would bet you, given the percentage of women who are in law school, that probably 800 or 900 of those 2,000 are women. So it's a bigger percentage. It's a bigger number. I think women are doing different jobs than used to be the case. When I started out, you would see there were more women in the public sector and fewer in private law firms. I think there are more, you know, it's more evened out, although I still think that the ratio is more public to private for women.
And why do you feel women go more to law school, are going to law school more than before?
Well, you know, I think because they can. I mean, part of that is just a sort of consequence of the women's liberation in the 1960s and 70s, and part of a view that teaching isn't the only profession that's available, and so I think numbers help. They clearly help.
What would you say to all those people who are going to consider law school?
Well, I would say it's a great profession, I think. It's interesting. It's the knowledge and the way of thinking and the skills that you learn going to law school can help you in a lot of fields other than law. So it's a very useful degree, I think, in that respect. It's not just being a lawyer. But law school, it's expensive. And it's a terrible thing in this country about student debt. But the number of people that are taking the bar, and sometimes I see applications for fee waivers, these are people that have $100,000 to $200,000 worth of student debt. So I think if you're going to go to law school, you need to be sure that's really what you want to do, because if you are going to incur debt, it's got to be worth it to you to do that.
Yes.
But I think it is a degree that opens up a lot of possibilities and a lot of interesting work in the law and in other fields. And I think law can really, it's a great profession to help people. So, but I should ask you that question as a lawyer.
For our viewers, today we have Justice Botsford from the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court here with us, and we're very proud to have you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Please tell us, what would you tell to all those lawyers who want to apply to be judges?
It's the greatest job you could ever have, I think. It's just so interesting. You see so many different kinds of people and different problems. It gives you an opportunity to solve problems for people, and that's very satisfying when you can. It's very hard work, but you have to be somebody who enjoys deciding things. I think there are certainly lawyers who are friends of mine who say, I would never be a judge because what I like to do is advocate. I like to represent people. I like to argue on behalf of people. And if that's what you like, I think judging is going to be hard, because it's quite isolating, people say. You can't sort of hang out with all your pals at the bar anymore if they are lawyers, because they may be before you. So it's much quieter than practice can be, and if what you like is the kind of camaraderie and advocacy, it may not be something that you like. But if you really enjoy puzzling through legal problems and solving those problems, it's an absolutely great job. Great job.
Your Honor, turning now to the Supreme Judicial Court, please tell us about it. When was it established and how? The Supreme Judicial Court was founded or established in 1692. So that's a lot of years ago. Yes.
300 and almost 50, but and my math isn't good enough. But anyway, it's a lot of years. It's the longest continuously sitting appellate court in the Western Hemisphere. It's got it obviously was founded before the United States of America became United States of America.
Yes.
Was still a colony of England, and it was originally both a court that decided appeals as well as a trial court, and it also, the judges on it rode circuit, which means they sat together in Boston, but they would get on their horses and go all over the state. And so it was a very different court. So one of the points of it is its history, but now it has 7 justices. Excuse me. There are 4 women and 3 men at the moment. This is a big deal because it's only the second time in history that there has been a majority of women. The first woman appointed to the Supreme Judicial Court was in 1977. And at one point, right before she retired, and that's Justice Ruth Abrams, there were 4 women for about 3 months. And then she retired, and then it was 3 women and 4 men. But now, for the last year, we have had 4 women, and it will continue for some time. So that's good. And the judges on the court now, most of them were judges on lower courts. They were trial court judges in different courts. We have, excuse me, one who wasn't, who was a lawyer, and only a lawyer, and appointed directly as a lawyer. But it's a group of people that, it's a very collegial group of people. I enjoy working with all of them a great deal. Yeah.
And as a court, Your Honor, how does the Supreme Judicial Court pick the cases?
We have cases, we have a mix of cases. So there are some cases that we have to have because the legislature said these appeals have to be heard by the Supreme Judicial Court. And I should just be clear that the Supreme Judicial Court only does appeals. We do not do trials anymore. I wish I knew the year that stopped doing trials, but we only do appeals, which means we are reviewing the work of all the other courts in Massachusetts, whether it's the juvenile court or the district court or the superior court or the housing court or the probate and family court. So that's what we do. We review other decisions of other judges on those courts. So some cases we have to have. For example, we by statute, only the Supreme Judicial Court can review an appeal from a first-degree murder conviction. But most appeals actually go as of right to our intermediate appellate court, the appeals court, but not for first-degree murders, and for some reason not appeals from decisions of the Department of Public Utilities.
Oh, interesting.
I think I know why that's so, but it's sort of a historical reason that doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. But in any event, so those 2. We also have to hear, for example, if each of us sometimes sits as an emergency judge. And if we make a decision as a single emergency judge, if somebody wants to appeal that, it has to come to the Supreme Judicial Court. So those we have to do. But in addition, we can, the cases that are filed in the appeals court, the intermediate appellate court, we have lawyers on our staff who review all of them, and we pick and choose cases from that court that we take out of that court and hear ourselves. And also, finally, we hear cases, if you have your appeal heard by the appeals court and you're disappointed, you can seek further appellate review to the Supreme Judicial Court. We don't take many of those, but we do take some.
And Your Honor, would you be deciding which cases you would like to pick, or would you have assistance from other people? Or?
You mean me personally?
Oh, yes.
No. We have a, we have 3 members of our court. It rotates, but 3 members of our court are on a committee, and they make the initial decision about which cases to hear directly from the appeals court. And then all of us, all 7 of us, decide together which cases that we're going to hear for further appellate review. And then, so individually, with one exception, we don't pick the cases. The one exception is that when you sit as a single justice hearing these kinds of emergency cases and some others, if I think that a particular case raises a really important issue that the whole court should decide, I can report that case to the full court. So in that sense, I can pick a case, but
yes,
that's not very often.
Wonderful, Your Honor. So for the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, which are the most salient, important, outstanding decisions that you feel you've heard?
They're all. They're not all at all. But I'll just pick up some that are kind of interesting, and I'll sort of go from early to late.
Some famous ones.
Yes. So the first one I will mention is called Quock Walker. That's Quock, Qwok, Walker. And Quock Walker was a slave in Massachusetts in the 1770s and 1780s. And he thought that he had been promised his freedom by his owner. His owner died, and the subsequent owner didn't do it. Anyway, there was an appeal brought to the Supreme Judicial Court in 1783. This was 3 years after the Massachusetts Constitution had been passed. And the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that under the Massachusetts Constitution, every man is entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and slavery was unconstitutional. So it was the first declaration that slavery was unconstitutional in the whole United States by the Supreme Judicial Court.
That is remarkable, Your Honor.
So that's one. Then there is, of course, the Goodrich case. I'm skipping way forward to 2003, which declared that marriage, people of the same sex were entitled as a right of equal protection to be married. So that's 12 years before the United States Supreme Court just decided that this year, this past June. And so that was the first first court in the United States to declare that. And the rest is history for the last 15 years. And then one more I would just mention in the positive side is a case that we decided in 2013 involving juveniles. Because there's been a lot of development of the law involving juveniles in the last 10 years. As courts have recognized what social scientists have said, which is that the adolescent brain isn't fully developed, that really affects things like decision-making and moral choices, and that needs to be taken into account in terms of the law. And so in 2013, we decided that it's unconstitutional for any sentence, for when a juvenile is convicted of even first-degree murder, the most serious crime that you can have, it's unconstitutional to sentence a juvenile to life in prison without parole.
Yes, and the name of that decision?
It's Diachenko.
Versus
the District Attorney of Suffolk County.
Your Honor, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but you're fascinating. It's fascinating what we've learned today, and all these opinions from the Supreme Judicial Court and cases. For our viewers today, our guest was Justice Margot Botsford from the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. And thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
And thank you for watching. Please view our episode at www.discoveringthelaw.com. My name is Lucy Rivera.